Tina Bush, agent, for a 6-month retail Class B fermented malted beverage license from May to October 2023 for the premises located at the Rapids Area Sports Complex at 1801 16th Street South. Sue?
Yes, this is the second year that the Ranger Baseball will be having the license at the new sports complex, and everything's in order. They do have permission from the school district to be there and have alcohol on school, and recommend approval.
Thank you. I'll make a motion to approve. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'm going to vote. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, say nay. Considering request from Wisconsin Rapids Women's Softball Association, general agent for a 6-month retail Class B fermented malted beverages license for 2023 for the premise located at Newfield at 311 17th Avenue South. Concession stand and seasonal softball area. Premises extension to include area for the softball tournament from May 19th, 2023 to May 21st, 2023. Sue?
Yes, everything's in order. This is for the women's softball field, and then also for a tournament that will include the men's softball field.
Any questions or comments?
Move to approve.
Motion by Veneman,
Second.
seconded by Bemke. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, I move to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it, 3-0. Item 6, initial review of alcohol license renewals. Sue?
I don't think she was going to bring them all down. There's really, I think she said about 85 to 90% of licenses have been renewed. There are no issues with any of them that have renewed so far. And I guess at the next meeting, we'll report on the renewals. Oh, okay. She wasn't sure on that. I didn't know if she could. Yeah, there is one. I guess there is one with delinquent personal property taxes at this time, but they'll have some time to pay that. Otherwise, everything looks in order for them, and they will come back for another review, and we'll have actually all of them for you to review at the next meeting.
So at this time, you don't need anything from us?
Nope.
Thank you. Item 7, discussion and possible action on amending policy guidelines for Rapids Rediscovered Grant Program. Kyle?
Thank you. Some of you may recall that last fall I had brought this forward as a conceptual that we would make some changes to this program. It's been in place since 2018. Nobody's taken advantage of the program, and I think it's primarily due to the restrictions for owner occupancy as well as certain home sizes in the program. And so we've tweaked it a little bit. We've removed the owner occupancy requirement, opening the door for this program to be accessed by a developer who wants to create a new single-family home but wants to rent it, or potentially for a duplex if the lot size is large enough to accommodate a duplex. And then we've also reduced the minimum size. So previously it required 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and 2-car garages. I think given the small nature of many of these infill homes and these sites, that it's appropriate to reduce that as well, to make it fit within a little bit different niche or framework for workforce housing. With that being said, we would recommend these changes to the program as provided in the attachment. You'll see that the redlined items are being removed, and then the blue items in the packet are being added. Thank you.
Questions, comments? Jake?
So have you had any interest in this at all? I mean, has there been any conversation in the community about potentially making these changes and potentially having some interest in this?
Yes, we've probably fielded a half dozen requests. Most of them occurred last year after we did a press release on it. Unfortunately, most of them, once they realized there were the owner occupancy requirements, just didn't have interest. I think there's a lot of interest to kind of find these smaller infill lots and develop them. But again, the difficulty is the size of the lots, so trying to meet that larger, three-bedroom, two-bath, two-garage on a small 60-foot wide lot is tough. And then, right, most of them are looking to have them be rentals. And from my point of view, community development, I mean, either way, we're generating new value, new growth, new taxes. It could be the catalyst to additional development within a neighborhood, could be the catalyst to additional, right, lots within the vicinity, could open the door for the developer to do more around the community. So I think the general focus is still being met of the program to spark development, whether it's single-family owner-occupied or a single-family rental.
Okay, and you've probably told us this before, but could you tell us again, how do we fund this? Let's say the program next year or this year yet is a huge success. Do we fund this every year?
Yeah, so this program was, I guess I can't speak directly to it, perhaps Tim could, but this program and the dollars from it came from the senior housing complex and kind of the developer fees as part of the developer agreement through that project over here behind Centralia. And this program was created to focus on infill lots. The approval for the funds has to go through Common Council. So if, there was a request and it was on the periphery of the city, or there were a bunch of vacant lots around it, like in Bowles, I don't know if that would warrant this program. But if you're in a very dense part of the city and there was a house that, issued a raise order on it, and it's a small lot, surrounded by development, I think it would be a good candidate. The one thing I kind of questioned opening the door now to non-owner occupancy was whether or not this $5,000 and $10,000 threshold was too much. I was kind of questioning whether or not we should dial that back to maybe $3,000 and $5,000. But time will tell. If it becomes very successful and there's additional interest, I think we could certainly bring a request forward to council to see if they wanted to fund it. But the intent is not to continue to, I think, fund it, and if it's successful. But Tim, maybe you can speak to that further on when it was originally created and if it was just going to be depleted or if it was going to be filled over time.
The program was funded with a one-time developer fee from the development over by the Centralia Center, which was in 2018, maybe.
18, yep.
So, other than that, there's no plans, or at that time, there was no discussion about, a continual appropriation going forward. I guess it's determined on, the success of the program and, and other budget priorities too, so if we were going to fund it, it would probably be part of a budget process.
Okay, thank you.
Tim?
I was just looking through the thing. Do you have in their application that they have to submit a W-9?
Yes, I believe, so I only attach the program guidelines. I note that the application is a separate, 2 or 3 page form. I think if this is approved, we would make changes to the application, and that could be one
Yeah,
of the
because similar to our
requirements.
COVID grant
Yep.
program, they would be getting receive a 1099 for that, and I just want to make sure they're aware of that up front.
Any further comments, questions? What are your wishes?
I'll make a motion to approve or amending the policy guidelines for the Rapid Rediscovered Grant Program.
Second.
Got a motion by Bemke, seconded by Veneman. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, I move to vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it, 3-0. Item number 8, discuss and possible action on contracting building plan review services with E-Plan exam for the inspection division of the Community Development Department. Kyle?
Thank you. I provided a very detailed memo. I hope you had time to read it. I'm not going to try to regurgitate that memo, but ultimately what we're looking to do is to bring in contracted services for plan review for commercial projects. Right now, we do have a building inspector who's credentialed to review projects, commercial projects, both plumbing, HVAC, and building. Electrical doesn't require review. But we've had some difficulty in, given the timing of the year, given the, kind of the communication between, contractors and developers, as well as the state, that I think this is a good solution to those concerns and those problems. And we've seen a lot of other communities across the state pursue this, either with this entity, or I think there's another one in the state as well. And I'll give you a little history. This really was created to allow municipalities to be more flexible when it came to building review for larger projects. The state had been backlogged for about, 6 to 8 weeks for building review. So for example, if Shopco was doing an alteration in their building, they would have to submit to the state, and it would take anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks. Now it's a little bit better. Now it's about 4 to 5 weeks for that review, and we can't issue that permit as the local agency until the state has reviewed that. Now, if we go with this contractor, they can review all the small projects, but they can also achieve us full delegation as a community that can review all plans. So the Shopco plans that used to go to the state could now be reviewed by this entity, and their turnaround time is 15 days. So it allows us to be a little more nimble when it comes to building projects and further some of these economic development initiatives that, have already been months in the planning in terms of plan commission and just contact with our office. So I think it's a win-win for us. There isn't a significant cost to it, and actually I think we'd be able to capture additional revenues because, as the memo indicates, part of the contract includes a 10% kickback on all fees that they collect. So a contractor that's doing a project, again, I'll bring up Shopco, they would normally submit that project to the state, and we wouldn't see any of those review fees. Now, if we hire or enter into a contract with this service provider, they would submit very similar fees to this service provider, and that individual or the business would kick back 10% of those fees to the city. So that's new captured revenue that we typically never were seeing in the past for a very large project. And we're talking review fees of several $1,000s. So for example, if it's $3,000, 10% of that is about $300 that would be kicked back, and those would occur monthly. I've talked to Tim, I've talked to Sue. I think they would also echo that this seems appropriate for our office and for the city, and obviously we're recommending approval. Thank you.
Questions, comments? From what I understand, we have somebody in-house that the state normally does the inspecting. This company would do it in place of the state, correct?
No, we serve as the delegated agent for the state to do inspections, all inspections across the board. We only have limited capacity to review building projects under a certain threshold. That threshold happens to be 50,000 cubic feet for new construction, 100,000 cubic feet for alterations. Anything beyond that threshold has to go to the state for review. Inspections, because we're statutorily required to inspect properties within 3 days of the request, typically takes precedent. And when you're talking about a construction project like the jail or the high school or any other commercial project, typically that's on a larger scale, our inspectors are out there, weekly, multiple times a week for more than an hour at a time, inspecting different footings and walls and so forth. And that usually takes precedence. So the plan review side of things typically works, at the bottom of our priority list. And with one inspector that has the capacity to do that from a commercial standpoint, it's proved a little bit difficult. And so with going with this third-party contractor, we can respond, at least at a minimum within a 15-day timeline, for not only those smaller projects that we would historically have reviewed in-house, but now we can be fully designated by the state to review everything. So now the Shopco project that would used to go to the state can now be reviewed by this third-party contractor, and we can capture some of the revenues on those fees by doing this.
So we're not hiring them, they're providing the service and getting paid by the customer, basically. That's
Correct.
doing it, and we're getting 10% of the fees that are. going
Correct.
in.
So we enter into a 3-year contract with them. They've got their own fee structure. The building contractor is paying that fee structure directly to this third-party consultant. And then the third-party consultant reviews the plans. They have some back and forth. And then we hold the permit. We don't issue the building permit until this third party says, we've done it, we've got an architect and engineer that have reviewed it, here's the letter of approval, go ahead, City of Wisconsin Rapids, and issue the building permit. And we're still capturing, the majority of our fees are based on the building permit, not plan review. Because most of what we do in the inspection office is on site. Our time's devoted to the inspections, regularly scheduled inspections for these large projects.
So the person in-house that was doing it, it's going to alleviate some of the burden and stress. But
Correct.
it was only part of what they're doing, so.
Correct. And one thing, some would say, well, what do you backfill then to fill that void? And one thing that we just haven't had time for is building code violations. So there's several across the community, could be shingles or roof siding ripped off, a building falling down, and that has fallen to the bottom of the priority list also because of, the inspections and the plan review that may trump those items. So I think it would allow us more time to follow up on some of those code enforcement issues from a building standpoint.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? What are your wishes?
I'll make a motion to, to approve.
Second.
Motion by Bemke, seconded by Veneman.
Can
Any
I,
other?
I just want to note, and Sue, you could probably clarify, we'll probably be bringing a contract, service contract then to council, which will outline everything that we've discussed basically in the memo, the terms of the contract and so forth.
And that,
I'm just finishing up right now. It will definitely out for the council. It's really just the legalese of, of everything that's in the proposal and so on. So there's really nothing, I'm just making sure the insurance and indemnity and things like that are covered, so. But I'll definitely get it to you as soon as,
2 business days in advance.
2 business days in advance.
Thank
Yes,
you.
I promise.
Yep, that's all I wanted to note, that we didn't have the official we have it, but it's still being reviewed.
so I guess it brought to mind that, so in the end, who oversees them as a company?
So they would probably directly report to me as the Director of Community Development that oversees the Building Inspection Department.
Okay, and I'm just curious, the only reason I'm asking, so yeah, I mean, obviously, they're a professional. They need to know the ins and outs of everything that,
Yes, they have a licensed engineer and architect on staff. They have 15 plan reviewers. Marshfield signed on in December. contracting services isn't new to us. We have a contracted electrical inspector, Badger State Electric, that we've been contracting with for several years, just because to find somebody in the trades is tough, and because we don't have quite enough electrical inspections to warrant a commercial full-time or even part-time electrical inspector.
Okay, it's good. It's a good plan. Yep.
To get these inspectors, so what are the let's say electrical inspector, what are the qualifications?
So you've got to be credentialed and licensed. You've got to take tests, obviously, and continuing ed. There are different levels, right? So there's your UDC, which is your Uniform Dwelling Code, which is all residential. We have, as the memo indicates, a full-time UDC residential inspector. And then we have a full-time commercial plumbing and building inspector who also has their UDC qualifications. Electrical is kind of the missing piece. We don't have a commercial electrical inspector. Again, it's very similar. You've got to get your credential, your license and your credentials to perform inspections.
Okay, thank you.
It's pretty much like a master of the trade.
So if you were, let's say, for example, that you're a master electrician, but you still have to go on to get the certification to do the inspections, correct? Is there more beyond that?
I don't believe so.
Interesting.
You'll be, so when, for example, the state, when they issue their delegation to us as a licensed community to perform inspections, we have to basically register our inspectors with them. I don't know if I'd consider that a credential, but it's like a registration that they need to know that we do have the ability to perform those inspections and have qualified inspectors with their credentials, master plumber, UDC qualifier and contractor, if that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, so it's intriguing to me, but so you said Marshfield signed on with them and they're building, is it a new, how old is the company, this company? And Roughly,
I think they're about 3 or 4 years old.
okay, so is there other companies that did services like this, or is this kind of a new concept that's kind of shared amongst?
Yeah, I'm aware of one. And again, this primarily stems from trying to relieve the state of the influx of requests. The state, and you've probably heard about it in the legislature, they just haven't addressed this issue in terms of plan review at the state level. They haven't hired additional staff that they've hired, they haven't been able to keep, probably for a number of reasons. So then obviously this company said, you know what, I'm a licensed architect engineer, I could get full delegation for these communities, enter into a service contract with them, and move things along much faster than the state can. And the proof is that they've hired, several people to assist with their business over the last couple of years. I think it started out with 2, now they've got 15 plan reviewers on staff.
Awesome, I think this is a good call. This is just, right now, we're just moving it to the council then,
Correct.
right? So we have a motion by Bemke, seconded by Veneman. Any other questions or comments? Are you guys good, Tim? Yeah. Seeing none, I move to vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you.
Review and consider for approval, item 9, review and consider for approval 2023 budget amendment number 1. Tim?
Okay, this is the resolution that we do every year, carrying forward funds from the unspent funds from the 22 budget and appropriating them into the 2023 budget for expenditure. Basically, what makes up these is if we have any unspent grant funds, unfinished projects, or we have various replacement accounts where we budget X amount of dollars to go into, usually for a capital account for future expenditures like police vehicles, fire vehicles, our fleet replacement account, computers, office equipment, and things like that. So This is the resolution that we do each year that kind of enumerates all those activities. If there's any specific questions on any of them, I'd be happy to answer. I do believe I emailed the resolution with all the explanations for each individual item, so if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Questions? Comments? Jake?
So Tim, with the grants that we didn't spend down, you get to keep the balance of all of that, or there's some of them, if you don't use them, it has to be returned?
Usually all the grants are, unless it has an expiration date on the, if you don't spend the grant funds by a certain period of time, then you may be required to return those. But as far as I know, any of the grants that we currently have, I'm not aware of any timelines. The only one I know is the ARPA funds, of which we have to obligate the funds by April or December 31st, 2024, and expend them by December 31st, 2026. And by obligate is have a contract signed for a project or thing like that. But I don't think, I think the intent of the ARPA funds is that obviously we approved the Centralia Center roof and we have about $850,000 left over. And I think we're going to be having some upcoming discussions on the use of those funds with probably, depending on the nature of the project, those will probably be included in a 2024 budget and expended in 2024.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? So Tim, my understanding is, correct me if I'm wrong, the money is moving forward in the same line items? It's moving forward to 2023?
Correct. You're right. So where there are unexpended funds in that budget line item, that they're being put in the same line item. And if you notice, as part of the resolution to kind of put some, internal controls on the use of those funds, the resolution does contain some approval authority. So for expenditures $2,500 or less out of any funds that are carried forward, the department head has discretion to approve those expenditures. More than $2,500 but less than $10,000 requires the mayor to approve those before they can be expended. And then anything over $10,000 that's coming out of these funds, it will come before this committee for approval, unless the item is specifically outlined in their 2023 budget. So if they plan to use some of these funds in 2023, included that item in their budget and it was line item, so it's approval, then they don't have to go through that approval authority because it's already been approved as part of the 2023 budget.
Okay, so we're not talking about extra money. We're talking about money that
Right.
was set to be used,
Right.
was not used fully, and it's moving forward.
Correct. These are existing funds that we had at the end of 2022. And like I said, a lot of them are replacement accounts. So, say for, for ambulance equipment, we put, I think, $38,000 each year into this account to fund future ambulance purchases. And so those funds accumulate over time until they're expended.
Okay.
And so there's no new money being created. It's already was approved in the 2022 budget and probably budgets before that, depending on the nature of the account.
Got it. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? What are your wishes?
Move to approve.
Got a motion by Vendeman. I'll second for Zacher for a second. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, I move to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it 3-0. Item 10, audit of the bills. Jay.
I'll move to approve checks numbers 16680 through 16967.
I got a motion by Bemke. I will second it. Second by Zacher. Any questions or comments? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it 3-0. Next meeting date is Tuesday, June 6th at 4 p.m. All good?
I think so. Hold on just a sec. Yep, that should be okay.
All right. Next meeting date set Tuesday, June 6th, 4 PM. Item 12, adjournment. I make a motion to adjourn. Got a second by Bemke, motion by Zacher. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it, 3-0.